Well, good morning, everybody. I'd like to start you off today with some satellite data from yesterday. Specifically, I was keeping an eye on how the snowpack that was from the previous system is starting to erode right in this area. Of course, that's just before we're going to add a little bit more over this area with this next system that's coming out of Texas later today. We can also see kind of the end of the lake effect snow. Some cloud cover still sitting here over parts of the eastern Great Lakes. But with the southerly wind that's returned there, we've kind of shut down that lake effect snow. And some places here did pick up between 12 and 30 inches of snow off the ends of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. There were heavier snows also, of course, up by Superior and on the downwind side of Lake Michigan as well. But what I'm keeping an eye on is actually right here. So this is the wave that moved out of California. It's moving overnight last night into parts of Arizona, putting down some snow at higher elevation. And as the sun was setting, and by the way, we're almost at our greatest angle. We've only got, about 21 more days until we get to the solstice, when this will be at its greatest angle here, giving us our shortest day in terms of daylight hours in the northern hemisphere. But as that day approaches, we continue to see, the atmosphere advertising signs of what could be a pretty active winter overall for many across the lower 48. One other thing to point out before I get into this forecast is just we've had another day of widespread coverage of extremely dense fog, some of it being freezing fog here in parts of the Pacific Northwest. You can really see it earlier in the day right in through this area. So just really an impressive view here on satellite, despite the fact we don't have any major systems rolling through the midsection of the country. But that's all about to change pretty quickly, and I'd say the area that's going to be under the gun the most is going to be parts of the Pacific Northwest in the coming probably 15 days, over the next 15 days. We do have the winter weather advisories from that little shortwave coming out, the one that came out of California and is sneaking into parts of Arizona and New Mexico today. But then as this low emerges, we're going to be talking about a system that rolls right up through this section of the country. We've already got a winter weather advisory out for parts of Iowa based on the snowfall forecast that's coming up. And there's going to be some very windy conditions at times here. Now, the temperature pattern is about to change in a big way. All of this cold air, we knew that today was the last day for the really cold air in the southeast. The major warm-up is on its way, and in fact, some of the places in the northern plains, we'll be talking about early next week temperatures up in the 50s, maybe cracking 60s. So this is really going to be changing quite a bit here. All right, so this is what the system's going to look like later today. Very strong winds coming out of western Texas. The low begins to build right into this area. And can you see the frontal boundary? Right into there, a little bit better drawing there, right into this area that the low is going to just roll through. And it's being supported by a rather large high pressure cell that's just pumping in the moisture on the back side here. So this does have the makeup of a pretty potent system in parts of the southern plains. Looking at the current temperatures early this morning, we've already watched the warm sector open, but you can find that boundary pretty easily as to where this system is going to be able to draw its colder air from, and then also just kind of roll straight through as the low pressure tends to ride through that pressure trough that's created out ahead of it. So there's a frontal boundary in here we got to watch. Pretty cold air on the back side of this, though, but as I said, the temperatures here in the northern plains, Canadian Prairie, I'll show you in a few minutes, are really going to be jumping up in the next 7 to 10 days. Last cold morning here in the southeast, as well as this warmth starts to build into that area. And if we just go ahead and jump on in and take a look at the severe weather risk today, Storm Prediction Center continues to keep a region down here with an enhanced risk. It's in southeastern Texas, and we're going to watch this move farther to the east tomorrow, looking somewhere like this as we get into the first day of December. On the high-res NAM model, let's just kind of pick it up here. This is the 6Z run. So we're going to watch snow coming through New Mexico today. We're going to watch that low emerge out into the panhandles here. And by tonight, this whole corridor begins to kind of open up for the risk of strong to severe storms and some locally very heavy rain. Keep an eye on the snow on the back side of this as this system kind of progresses through, the Midwest toward the eastern Great Lakes. And it's important to know what's behind it. You're going to start to see a lot of moisture coming into the Pacific Northwest. The snow's already beginning to pile up here in this part of the Cascades. We have better snows forecast for the Rockies, both central and northern. So just watch the west as this system starts to move through. So this is tonight at 7 o'clock. We play through the overnight hours, getting out there to early Friday morning. This is midday Friday, getting into Friday evening. And again, we're going to watch for snow on the northern side of this, right in through this area. It could be mixed with a little bit of sleet, maybe some freezing rain as well. As we play this out to Friday night, getting into early Saturday morning, I like to see the moisture coming streaming back into the south. This is an area that we've been talking about that's pretty deep in drought. And you know that we'll get into drought monitor in about 3 hours from now. I had to record a little early today. I'm on my way to West Lafayette, Indiana, to talk to a group. I'm pretty excited to see them today. So a little too early to show you the new drought monitor, but we'll look at it tomorrow. Then you can already see the Northwest coming back into the view of the Pacific Jet. And I just want to show you something. The Pacific Jet, although it will be oscillating in its position, is right now just zonal across the North Pacific. Look at that. I mean, there's a lot of momentum and a lot of power in this flow, and it's going to target the Northwest. And what's going to be interesting about this is, if you look over the next 15 days, look at this hard cutoff right in through here, where to the south, the flow is not. To the north, the flow is targeted, and as a result, we could see precipitation amounts 5+ inches above historical averages for the next 2 weeks coming into coastal Washington and Oregon. The subtropical jet's helping out with the anomalous weather that you see here, and most of the weather conditions that you have going through this part of Kansas all the way to Michigan is primarily from the storm system right now, but there is another storm system out about 10 days from now that we're keeping a close eye on, and there is a system late this weekend we're going to watch as well. So there's still a few chances of getting some moisture into this area. But as we've been focusing on, the story is really written on the balance of things happening in the upper levels. We watched a large ridge build into Greenland. That is being complemented by very strong flow on the southern side of that trough coming across the Pacific. We've dipped deeper troughs into the southern and southwestern part of the United States, while there's been some slight ridging in the southeast, and that just sets up a pattern where we get flow like this, which is good. We want to see that. That's the type of flow that keeps systems rolling through. So late this weekend, we'll keep an eye on this low. After the little shortwave that gives us a severe weather goes through, we'll keep an eye on this low. And it will, late this weekend, find its way into New England. We'll show you some of those new snowfall totals in a few moments. Now, as we know, once we get out there past the weekend and early next week, we do get a little bit of a reset on this pattern. There's the ridge that comes in that brings the heat I mentioned in the northern plains. But as I've talked about all week, that flow coming out of the northwest is convergent, which means we're going to have high pressure building. We're going to have drier conditions. It's just not the setup to deliver a low. But we can't argue with the fact that there's a deep Gulf of Alaska trough. And after a little bit of a weekend break and early next week break for the Northwest, that trough nears the coast again by mid to late week next week. And this is going to just set us up once more for some incredible onshore flow and heavy precip, but most of it north, not into California. We're going to keep an eye on that trough. Remember, we were watching the 8th coming into the west, the 9th over the Rocky Mountains, and then the 10th as the system tries to dig its way. See the tilt on that trough? It tries to dig itself into the southern plains. We're going to see if that can eject on like the 10th, 11th, 12th to give us another system in the midsection of the country. So that's the mainstay of the pattern. It is progressive and moving. There's a lot of momentum in the Pacific Jet. The Greenland block doesn't last forever, but it is there now. So that's what the major pieces of this flow are going to be. So who doesn't get moisture out of this? It's this corridor right in through here, this section of Texas and California. That's the area that's really missing out over the next 7 to 10 days. While we could get 6 to 10 inches of liquid out of this system in parts of the Pacific Northwest, and we'll show you the snowfall in a few moments, it's going to miss the southwest overall and then not progress over the mountains. So no deep low that forms from that flow. In other words, it's not coming through as a trough that ejects in Wyoming or Colorado or Montana to curl up a big low here that rolls through the country. We've mainly just got the one today and then a second one that follows it over the weekend, but it's farther to the east as well. As I mentioned all week, this is great news. I love seeing all this moisture coming back into the south. Our two states that are deepest in drought compared to their averages are Louisiana and Mississippi. So to see that is a positive sign. Okay, I want to do the multi-model analysis. I'm going to ask again for your forgiveness. I still have a problem. I'll have to search this afternoon when I get back home to see what's going on. But the European model keeps dropping out the 90-hour forecast for me. So I'll have to get in there and dig. So we've already seen through this point in the forecast. This is Friday night getting into Saturday morning. And both models dropping some good rains down here in the south as we watch this low exit east. Watch the northwest, though. This is already here on Saturday morning, getting into Saturday midday, Saturday evening. We're watching lots of just momentum in the flow targeting the northwest, and it's going to be just a continuous kind of run of some precipitation there. We will keep an eye out this Saturday night and Sunday morning for a potential system to roll through the Midwest, but we see the lingering front over the southeast up to the Carolinas here, pulling in some precipitation. So here we get into Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. There's my missed file, or my missed variable. I'm sorry about that, but let's get past it. There we go, into Monday morning. Now, we've seen the GFS try to come into better alignment with the European. Remember, we have this second weekend system that tries to pull through this area. It's not nearly as potent until it gets to the East Coast. And the European model continues to deliver a lot of snow that is not being resolved in the GFS for parts of New England. That's Monday midday. This is getting into Monday evening. And again, watch the Northwest continues to see into next Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. Just we keep pushing the moisture into that area. And that gets us out there about a week in the forecast. And if we look at how much snow we're expecting during this time, the Cascades do have the potential here for picking up, 30 to 50 inches of snow, maybe higher at higher elevations. Parts of the northern Rockies the same. Even the central Rockies are picking up some decent snow out of this, but not the Sierra Nevada. The flow is not here. Unfortunately, it's coming in like this, not like this. So that's a major difference for the West Coast overall. We do see this stripe of snow. This is from the system that's happening today into tomorrow. And then remember, the European model is by far the snowiest model for New England, given that system late this weekend, early next week. So that's just a quick look at your next 7 days of total snow. On the total precipitation side of it, I do want to compare the models. This is the European, there's the GFS. Overall, I like this. In terms of location, they're very similar, but amounts, the European is wetter in the Northwest. The GFS is much wetter down here in, from Mississippi to Alabama to Georgia, and the European is wetter into New England. So it is important to look at those differences. As I always do, I like to show you the probabilities. I think there's more of a story written in these maps to give us an idea on this precipitation than sometimes looking at the individual runs. So this is the European ensemble. And what we've got here is the best chance at getting over an inch in the next 10 days. So again, hitting some of our drought areas here. What about 2 inches? We've got a little bit along the Gulf Coast, but other than that, it's going to be in the Northwest, where there's the chances of 4 and there's the chances of 8. So a lot of moisture coming in, all elevation driven here, of course, as the flow comes on shore. Our drier side of things, well, this is who's going to be missing out on this. We've had this picture painted pretty clearly by the models for a while now. So it's a lot of the plains and the Canadian prairie and pockets of the Southwest that have a very low probability of getting much moisture. In fact, here's the chance of getting less than 1/10 of an inch out of this pattern. So this is all important, very important because of where November has taken us. So we're at the end of the month now, and as you look, there's large portions of the plains in the Midwest, upper Midwest, getting down into the Tennessee, the Missouri, the Ohio, the Mississippi valleys that have been very dry. So to see the moisture that's coming through this area with this next system is good, but this map is going to look very different in December for the Pacific Northwest. Very different as the moisture comes in here. Just thinking about that moisture, I do want to give you the latest update on the soil moisture. This is the top 16 inches or 40 centimeters. This will be a major story for me for a while until we can get this corrected. Too many states right here in the heart of like the corn and soybean belt that have inadequate subsurface soil moisture, and I don't like going into winter with this. This needs to be corrected over the coming weeks and months. Do we have a chance at another system, around the 8th, 9th, 10th? We do. Here's what the flow looks like at that point. So again, still coming in, dive in like this. Love to see these troughs. But I need to get that to be here. That would be the ultimate kicker. If we could get that jet streak to go over the ridge and get down into here, it would really help with the upper level forcing in this system to produce a pretty large Midwestern or Central United States storm system. But I mentioned yesterday that I didn't agree with the week 2. We did see things change, right? So the CPC went wetter in this area, continued to be wet in the Northwest. The European model continues to show near average precipitation with that second system coming in next week. So I like that. We're wetter along the Gulf Coast. The GFS doesn't have quite the same magnitude in this system. That's why you see closer to the drier side of things in the GFS. But there's your week 2. All right, frost potential. This, again, the last day of the really cold air down here. Still have the frost lingering in parts of the San Joaquin Valley. That lasted a couple of extra days than what I expected from earlier this week. But our high temperatures, just watch how much this is going to change. Here's Thursday's highs getting into Friday. So there's another shot at colder air in the central United States while the warmth builds out ahead of that low. Much of the west is cooler. But then we get into Saturday and Sunday. Watch next week. By Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday, some very mild air taking temperatures into the 50s and 60s in the plains. So major swings in temperature here. And you can see it when I show you the 5-day sliding window of average temperature numbers. Watch the warmth build day 5 through 10. Now, I'll be honest with you, the second half of this month is right now just, I'm watching too many moving things to tell you that I know how this warmth translates east and what happens with the pressure patterns to kind of reinvigorate the storm track across North America. There are a few clues that things are beginning to shift, like the position of the MJO. We've seen a little bit of the stretching of the polar vortex. We've watched the momentum really shift around in the North Atlantic with that big ridge that built over Greenland. So there's a lot of things, I don't know, better phrase for it, but a lot of things wobbling around right now that have yet to come back into alignment to give us a good second half of December outlook. So I need to look at it more. I'll spend time this afternoon doing that. We'll work on it in the long range for tomorrow. But we'll keep an eye on this pattern because it is certainly mild east once we go forward. Actually, mild everywhere east of the Rocky Mountains out there in about middle of the month. Okay, so that brings me to South America. And I want to spend just a moment here telling you what's been going on for October and November. This is the major problem. We've had very strong flow compared to normal here, but weak in this area. All right, that's the problem. So the monsoon typically draws moisture from this very humid pocket of air that sits in the on the equator. It pulls it in over the Amazon and rolls it through, giving rain in this area. We then tend to get fronts that come up from the south here, and it all tends to meet in the middle. But the issue this year has been the flow's been very strong here, but we've not been able to pull it across the Amazon. And in addition to that, the Amazon has been extremely dry. This is looking at relative humidity from October 1st to just a couple of days ago. And you can just see this large pocket here of humidity values that are extremely low. So any flow that does come over this area has had its moisture pulled out of it by the very dry conditions sitting on top of the Amazon. So then we say, well, what has that done in terms of allowing for the atmosphere to build up precipitable water? Well, we've had a major deficit in this area and a huge surplus in through here. So this is where we've had our flooding, and this is where we've had our drought that's been developing. And the other piece of this is that the temperatures have responded. So we've had temperatures here that have averaged over a 2-month time period. Now this is up in the Amazon, but 4 to 6 degrees, Celsius above average. And to see temperatures here in this 2 to 5 degrees C range above average, that is over a 2-month time period, that is highly anomalous. We're talking about, 3 to 4 standard deviations away from the mean. That's significant statistically. So it's no wonder that the latest root zone soil moisture map continues to show issues on the Amazon and south. So this hits, the northern growing areas of Brazil and also east. And then we're extremely wet in southern Brazil. Lately, we've been working against the longer-term drought that has been in Argentina, but a lot more corrective action needs to happen there. In the near term, and this is one of those moving pieces, the MJO is weakly moving through the maritime continent. That's over by Australia. So it's currently in phase 3, but it's going to phase 4 and phase 5. And one of the things that we know historically about that is that phase 3 to 4 to 5 tends to give us a drier signal in parts of Brazil, specifically the north, central, and northeastern parts of their main growing areas here. So that's why we look at the next 10 days and we start to see that correlation. You see this pocket of Brazil showing up quite dry, while the heavy rains in southern Brazil, Rio Grande do Sul, along the Paraná River, which runs right in through here, better rains in the pockets of Argentina. That just continues to be the mainstay of this pattern. It's been like this for a while. Now, I want to be clear on the rainfall in this area because it shows drier, but we're ending November, beginning December, and December, January, February are very wet months for this region. So even though you see the drier pocket over the next 10 days, the chance of getting 2 inches out of this is still in the 50 to 70% range. The driest is here, okay, but 50 to 70% chance of getting 2 inches here, while in this part of Argentina and southern Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, the chances of 2 inches are almost 100%. In fact, go up to 4 inches, and we see very wet conditions down here. So that continues to be the story in South America. The hottest temperatures are going to be in the northeast, right in through here. But I just want to be clear that even though the maps show dry, it's still raining in this area. It's just dry compared to their average. All right, please keep that in mind. 2 other places to pick up on. The Panama Canal continues to show up extremely dry, as you can see here. In the forecast the next 10 days, not much going on. And I want to just reiterate this issue I brought up several times this week about the drought that's really hitting parts of South Africa. Their latest root zone soil moisture map really revealing the pockets of drought in some of their heavily agriculturally productive areas. All right. Appreciate your attention this morning. We'll talk again tomorrow on Friday. Until then, have a good one. Thanks.